Hello, one and all, and welcome back. Yes, back to the Great Unknown audio show with me, your illustrious host and most appropriate face for radio, Maxim Jennings. And yes, folks, by the title, you probably know where we're going with this one. We have had a very eventful morning, scaling a canyon. I should say, free climbing it. It didn't take too long, but it wasn't really my intention of doing that to start the day. But the trail that I wanted to do on Shot Hole Canyon Road was closed because some of the rocks were very loose and the trail could have been a bit perilous. And it was going to be like a 16-mile trail, which I think is 25k, something like that, which would have been a really nice day activity, walking on top and around the canyon. So that would have been really nice, but wasn't to be. So I had to think of another idea, because I really wanted to see the canyon from above. And as I was kind of driving back out of the park, I could see somewhat of a walking trail or trek marks from a previous venture of someone else, some other like-minded explorer, camper, adventurer, thrill seeker like myself. So I said, what the heck, let's try it. And I didn't follow the trail all the way up, as it kind of weaved in and out of some loose rocks of their own and kind of shrubbery, pine needles, trees. It had a bit of everything. But we made it to the top and had an absolutely fantastic view overlooking the canyon. It was very much worth it. I took one stop on the way just because there were a few caves really that had appeared. Oh God, how has that got inside my fly net? Get out. That have appeared over the course of time. And so it was really, really interesting to see those formations. But yeah, very much worth it. And then I found myself in a bit of a conundrum, because I parked on the side of the main track down Shot Hole Canyon Road. Quite self-explanatory what you'd find on that road. So I'd left a pin on my maps to make sure I knew where I was getting back to. And so I was kind of in a conundrum. Do I do what would have been the circuit just from an overlooking point to get back to the Shot Hole Canyon, which I think the whole kind of it's in Cape Range National Park, which is where I'm staying, but on the southern side. And as a canyon, I don't really know, like you go to the Grand Canyon, there's not one specific spot, I think, that is like the real wow factor. It's just as a whole kind of place, because it's so big. And it was the same with this place. So they had like a parking kind of viewpoint thing. And I'd already seen that. That's where I found the information where I wasn't going to be able to do the trail. So there was no point really me going back to that. So I spent a good 5k kind of overlooking the canyon, and then just decided to make my descent down. Now, with the ascent being kind of slightly perilous, because there were obviously some rocks that were moving, but as you're walking uphill, and I might have mentioned this before, it's good to dig your feet in, almost to give yourself a little foothold for when you're making uphill strides, so that you have some grip. Now that's a lot more difficult to do when you're going downhill, so I really put myself not at risk, but there were some points where my balance was tested and it failed, and I flopped to the floor. I now have a few battle scars and some war wounds, but nothing too perilous, nothing too dangerous to any vital organs or bones. which is quite fortunate. I just think growing up as a child, my body is almost like muscle memory, but body memory, because I'm so clumsy. And when I was 5 years old, little anecdotal story, I was sitting on the back of a sofa at the health and sports club that I used to go to do my tennis lessons, to do swimming. I was sitting on the back of the sofa, and then for some reason decided to, not because I'd been pushed or anything, decided to just fall back on the sofa, and I hit my head on a radiator and cracked my head open. So that happened pretty early on in my life, and although I don't remember it being too painful, I just remember there being a lot of blood coming out of my head and I thought I was dying. So I think my brain has taught my body how to kind of fall in the most cushioned fashion to protect vital organs. So I was falling over a lot on this descent and losing my balance, and where some people might have popped an ankle or, like, I don't know, just fallen flat on their face, my body was just prepared for it. And that's got nothing to do with my intelligence, which is, as you know, pretty lackluster. But I think it's just been my body's been cognitively trained to make sure that when I fall, on the frequent occasions that it does happen, I give myself as much chance of not being seriously injured as possible. So I'm very thankful to those early encounters with pain that have led me to be this way, because I'm very fortunate. Touch wood. So, and that's why you probably didn't hear from me going at the... Am I going the right way? Going on top, whilst I was walking on top of the canyon, because I didn't want to tempt with fate too early on and say that this is an easy walk, because I knew the downhill was going to be a bit harder than the uphill. Yeah, there we go. So a good start to the morning. We obviously saw a good sunset last night, and then after, we did manage to use the big hops, as I was explaining in the last episode, with the help of 2 or 3 people to get it working, because it was attached to it was right next to the barbecue. That was a gas barbecue, and then the gas hob had its own tank, and I'm looking at it, and it's got one switch to turn on the gas, and then there's a valve that you've got to turn, and I'm like, oh God, we're going to give it a go. And that's what it was exactly what I was telling myself. We're going to give it a go, and I get embarrassed asking for help, because I think there is a stereotype amongst blokes that they should be able to do everything associated with the outdoors, barbecuing, because they are some blokes are very protective of it. I'm not one of those people. I rather observe and just enjoy their hard work. But I tried. I failed, obviously, because I didn't have a lighter. So the gas was just on and nothing was happening. Then I asked another guy to help me, and he was like, oh, this guy helped me. And then the guy who was recommended to me tried to help me, and then his lighter wasn't working, so he needed to ask another guy who had matches. And we finally got it alight. And I had beef, which is vegan beef. Oh my God, what an experience that was, frying that up. I mean, it said it was best done on the barbecue, but when I got out of the packet, it was like all kind of molded together, like a piece of like stodgy. It looked like tofu, but like beef coloured tofu. Was very unattractive to see, and I was kind of just ripping it apart into chunks and then putting it on the frying pan. Not a fantastic delicacy. That is one of the problems with eating meat alternatives that are trying to be like meat. Sometimes it can end badly. I don't mind the vegetarian chicken that I've been eating, just because it's so much cheaper buying the vegan and veggie stuff. The meat alternatives rather than actual meat. It's just you're saving like half the money. So some people think it's worth it. We had that with the noodles. We were frying that up, and I put a bit of curry paste on top to add some sort of taste. And it wasn't too bad. And then we got back to the tent which we'd set up earlier, and there was a massive group of like a tour group that were all setting up. And by the time I got back to my tent, it was 8:30, like pitch black obviously, and they were just so loud. And I tried to make it clear and obvious that I wanted them to be quiet without verbally saying it. And so I got into my tent. They must have not seen me get into the tent because they were so loud. And I was like, oh right, I'll give it 15 minutes. And then I was rustling about and then unzipped the tent, had my torch out, didn't even have to say anything. And then she pointed out to me, oh, it's like, oh, there's a tent there, someone's trying to sleep there, we should be quiet. And so at least they verbally said it, but the noise still continued because there must have been about 40 of them, and they parked their coach right in front of my tent. So I couldn't see any of the sunrise in the morning without getting out of bed, but not too worried. But sleep overall was not too bad. We woke up at a relatively sane time of 7 o'clock before being woken up by the tour group. Thanks to them once again. But we were pretty much up anyway. So and then we set out on to the canyon, not knowing that we were going to be Bear Grylls for the day. But yeah, and that brings us to where we are now. So it's about 10 to 3 in the afternoon, and I'm currently on the Manga Trail. What a name! They love these names in Cape Range National Park. It's quite close to where some of the infamous snorkeling spots are that I'll be exploring tomorrow. I'm going to rent a snorkel and then go to various spots and see what aquatic life we can see. But this trail is only meant to be about 3 kilometres, so it brings my walking distance for the day up to about 12k, which is obviously not as much as I wanted to, but when you're doing strenuous activities such as ascending and descending canyons, you're still burning probably as many calories as you are walking on flats or on gradual inclines and declines. So I'll live with it. So yeah, this trail is meant to lead me to a gorge where you can also oversee Ningaloo Reef. I mean, Ningaloo Reef. What a name! What a name! Which is kind of the reef that surrounds the whole of Exmouth, notorious for having whale sharks there as well. But I was looking at the whale shark experience where you swim with whale sharks. Yeah, it's about 250 quid, so we're gonna hold back on that. I was doing some research and did see that you can also do it in Indonesia, so hopefully it's a bit cheaper there. I'm probably getting a bit more for my money. I was speaking to some people who had done it the day I arrived, and they said it was great, but sometimes you just got to take into account that because you're in Australia, everything is that bit more expensive. So you got to pick and choose. And personally, I would have rather do scuba diving on the Great Barrier Reef. Maybe just for the name and the label, but who cares? There are lots of whale sharks in the world. There's only one Great Barrier Reef. So yeah, snorkeling tomorrow. I will let you know how that goes. And once again, folks, thank you very, very much for listening, and you'll hear from me in the next one. Goodbye.